Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. The town of Driftwood lay nestled along the edge of a dense, looming forest, its quaint streets lined with homes that bore the warmth of familiarity, but masked the icy grip of unease beneath. The cheerful facades belied a haunting atmosphere, particularly as evening settled in, casting elongated shadows that whispered of secrets yet to be uncovered. After all, Driftwood had been a quiet community, a place where people turned their eyes towards the horizon instead of lingering on the periphery. But beneath this sense of safety, a disturbance brewed an undercurrent of something sinister that would soon awaken the town from its slumber. On an ordinary Friday evening, the kind of evening where the weekend beckoned with promises of relaxation, a sense of dread began to creep through the air. Locals went about their usual routines, but whispers of a series of unsettling incidents hovered like an unsettling fog. Pets had gone missing without a trace, strange noises echoed from the woods, and the townsfolk's laughter seemed slightly forced, their gazes lingering uneasily on the tree line. As the sun sank lower, plunging the streets into darkness, the sound of a distant siren sliced through the silence, a chilling reminder that the fairest of places can harbor the darkest of secrets. When an unthinkable event shattered the tranquility, Driftwood would find itself grappling with the painful realization that they were not isolated from the horrors of the world. The truth, however, would prove to be more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. The victim. Evelyn Parker was known by many in Driftwood as the spirited librarian, a woman whose laughter echoed through the aisles of the quaint town library and whose kindness seemed boundless. At 43, Evelyn had embraced her role as the heart of the community, often organizing book clubs and afternoon reading sessions for local children. Her warm smile and easy charm made her a beloved figure, one whose presence infused life into the everyday bustle of the town. But as summer gave way to fall, the warmth of Evelyn's spirit began to fade, casting an unexpected pall over Driftwood. On a brisk September morning, Evelyn was reported missing. Her absence from the library, a place she loved as much as her own home, was notable. As her friends and colleagues recalled their last interactions with her, they described a woman who had seemed slightly withdrawn, her laughter rendered infrequent, her energy dimmed. It was not like Evelyn to disappear without a word, and as the hours stretched into days, the initial concern morphed into a mounting anxiety that enveloped the tight-knit community. Search parties scoured the forest, sweeping through the dense underbrush and calling out her name, their voices resonating with a blend of determination and dread. But the silence was unyielding, thickening the tension that gripped Driftwood. As investigators combed through her life, they uncovered a path littered with unspoken troubles, echoes of past relationships that may have cast a shadow over Evelyn's otherwise shining reputation. Each layer peeled back revealed another thread woven into the complex tapestry of her existence, hinting that the woman who had sparked joy in others had long wrestled with her own inner turmoil. The crime scene. A week after Evelyn was reported missing, a fateful call came in that would forever change the lives of the townsfolk. A pair of hikers, venturing deeper into the forest trails, stumbled upon a clearing. In the center lay something tangled amongst fallen leaves and erratic undergrowth, a dark object obscured by nature's merciless grip. Their initial curiosity soon turned to horror as they approached, the realization setting in that they had discovered more than just the remnants of the Earth cycle. It was a makeshift investigative command center, a frenzy of movement, as officers roped off the area, their expressions gray. The atmosphere was thick with tension as forensic teams set to work, meticulously combing through the scene for any shred of evidence that might shed light on Evelyn's fate. The clearing, once a tranquil spot for nature lovers, was now a theater of sorrow, where whispers mingled with the rustling leaves, an unsettling reminder of how fragile life could be. An initial inspection revealed personal items scattered in an overturned backpack, a book, and a scarf, woven with a familiar floral pattern. A somber weight settled over the investigators as they pieced together the last moments of a woman who had meant so much to so many. It wasn't merely a body they sought to find. It was a life abruptly halted, a narrative interrupted. The air was heavy with unspoken words, the shadows of the past reminding them that this was not just a crime scene, but a painful chapter in a community story desperate for resolution. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest transformed into a labyrinth of sorrow and uncertainty. Each rustle of the leaves now felt like a whispered call for justice, a plea from the departed. The truth lurking within the stillness would soon be demanded, yet how far would they go to uncover it? The early investigation. The quiet comfort of Driftwood had been shattered, replaced by a palpable tension as investigators intensified their efforts. Detectives Ryan Hayes and Sarah Coleman led the charge, each possessing an instinct honed by years of experience on the force. As they pored over the evidence collected from the crime scene, they felt the weight of their responsibility, a promise to unveil the truth not just for Evelyn, but for the entire town that had been irrevocably changed. Interviews began immediately, with friends, family, and acquaintances lined up, each recounting their last moments with Evelyn. The chatter at the town square shifted from laughter to hushed conversations, and a cloud of suspicion began to form. To the detectives, it soon became evident that the idyllic facade of Driftwood masked a web of fractured relationships, unresolved conflicts, and buried grievances that could taint even the purest of souls. As the investigation unfolded, the detectives discovered that Evelyn had been involved in a tumultuous relationship with Greg Turner, a local artist known for his fiery temperament. Friends hesitated to speak ill of him, but whispers of volatility hung in the air like the scent of damp earth after rain. Reports emerged of heated arguments between the two, their once joyful exchanges devolving into bitter confrontations. Each thread unraveled a deeper complexity to Evelyn's life, her struggles, her hopes, the shadows cast by the ambitions of those around her. With a short list of potential leads, Hayes and Coleman honed in on electronic records, sifting through texts and calls, hoping to find something in overlooked detail, or a desperate plea that might illuminate the darkness. Their focus was sharp, yet the undercurrents of uncertainty were undeniable. As they ventured further into the investigation, the call for justice grew louder. But the pressing question remained: could they unravel the truth before it slipped away into the very fabric of the town's haunting past? The dead ends. Days turned into weeks, and the air in Driftwood grew thick with apprehension. As the investigation dragged on, the initial excitement surrounding the search for answers began to dwindle into frustration. Detectives Hayes and Coleman found themselves entangled in a labyrinth of leads that, one by one, proved fruitless. Hopes ignited only to fizzle out leaving behind a barrage of unfulfilled promises. The confrontation with Greg Turner had yielded nothing concrete. He maintained his innocence, offering alibis that were both believable and hard to corroborate. Friends stepped forward to vouch for him, complicating the narrative and forcing detectives to explore a multitude of perspectives, all with the same sense of dread circling above. Each interview cast further shadows on what had once seemed a straightforward case. As they moved through the increasingly murky waters, detectives began to dig deeper into Evelyn's life, scrutinizing her relationships beyond the surface. A past friendship with Miranda Caldwell caught their attention, a woman who had left Driftwood in a hurry years before, only to return recently under suspicious circumstances. Eyewitnesses had noted the tense interactions between Miranda and Evelyn. But when the detectives reached out, Miranda was nowhere to be found. Her absence was worrisome, a potential lead fallen through their fingers like grains of sand. The investigation shifted back toward the forest, where the remnants of the clearing seemed eerily silent, offering no new clues. As they scanned the landscape, the weight of each dead end bore down heavily. It felt as though the ghosts of the past loomed close, arms crossed, watching intently as they wrestled for resolution. With every unanswered question, the sense of foreboding deepened, leaving a bitter aftertaste in the air. Ruth hid cleverly amidst layers of complicity and secrecy. And despite their progress, the detectives felt they were still a step behind. A break in the case. On a particularly overcast afternoon, as the relentless drizzle drummed against the windows of the precinct, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A missing persons report that had initially seemed unrelated had been filed for a young man named Tom Rivers, a local known for his reclusive nature. A recent tip had suggested he might have information about Evelyn's case. Hayes and Coleman, a mix of skepticism and hope in their hearts, decided to pay him a visit. Tom lived on the outskirts of town in a dilapidated house, the walls cloaked in shadows, the windows obscured by grimy glass. As they approached, they noticed the telltale signs of neglect: overgrown weeds and faded paint, but something in the air felt electric. The door creaked open to reveal Tom, disheveled and wary, seemingly caught off guard by their unannounced arrival. Initial conversation was rife with hesitance. Tom spoke in fragmented sentences, his eyes darting like a trapped animal. But when the detectives gently steered the conversation towards Evelyn, a flicker of recognition sparked within him. He hesitated, palms sweating, as if wrestling with the weight of his own memories. Slowly, he mentioned a peculiar encounter in the days leading up to her disappearance. Late-night confrontation near the edge of the forest with what he described as though vague, Tom's account provided a crucial pivot in the ongoing investigation. He elaborated that he had seen Evelyn in heated conversation with someone in a hoodie. Their words indistinguishable, but their tension palpable. As he recounted the scene, a chill ran down Detective Coleman's spine as she sensed the importance of his recollection. Hayes took careful notes, heartbeats sensing in excitement if they could track down this mysterious figure. They might unveil the long-hidden truth of what had transpired that fateful evening. With renewed determination, the team felt the tide shifting in their favor. But they understood that every revelation also carried the weight of greater dangers lurking beneath the surface. The suspect, The mention of a dark figure rang in Hayes and Coleman's ears as the investigation took a pivotal turn. With Tom Rivers' description embedded in their minds, they began to review surveillance footage from the local traffic cameras. Multiple hours of grainy video flickered across the screen, filling the precinct with nervous anticipation. After hours of scanning, they finally glimpsed something that made their hearts race: a hooded figure, lingering just outside the coffee shop where Evelyn had been seen days before her disappearance. The detectives identified the individual as Jacob Fields, a local mechanic known for his reclusive behavior and occasional run-ins with the law. Jacob had a reputation in Driftwood for being abrasive and quick to anger, yet his presence was often overlooked, a man existing in the margins of a community that barely acknowledged him. Hayes remembered a few whispered accounts about his impulsive behavior, particularly his volatile interactions with others when he felt cornered or judged. With their sights set on Jacob, the detectives moved to secure an interview. Tension filled the air as they approached his workshop, the scent of metal and oil heavy inside. His hands moved deftly over the machinery, but when he spotted them through the grimy glass door, a shadow crossed his face, a fleeting indication of fear, or perhaps guilt. Sitting across from him, it quickly became apparent that Jacob was both defensive and on edge. His repeated insistence on his innocence rang hollow, layered beneath a facade that cracked ever so slightly when they pushed him on his whereabouts the night Evelyn went missing. Body language betrayed him as his eyes flickered toward the ground and back to their gazes, an unsure dance of apprehension revealing more than he intended. As the interview progressed, promises flowed like Smokey's alibi, obnoxiously perfect yet lacking the warmth of sincerity. Detectives could sense that he was withholding something, the air charged with the tension of unspoken truths. With the layers of circumstance closing in around him, Jacob Fields was now firmly planted in the crosshairs of their investigation. The trial. The courtroom stood as a stark contrast to the tranquil landscape outside. Yet it felt appropriate to a battleground where truth would contend against the shadows of doubt. Families, friends, and even distant acquaintances filled the benches, their faces somber, united in grief for Evelyn Parker. The air was thick with anticipation as the trial of Jacob Fields unfolded, a much-publicized event that had drawn significant attention to the small town of Driftwood. Detectives Hayes and Coleman watched intently from the gallery, their hearts heavy with the weight of the evidence they had gathered. The prosecution painted a vivid picture of Jacob as an erratic figure whose anger had led him to confront Evelyn in the woods that fateful evening. Tom Rivers' testimony, along with the surveillance footage placing Jacob at the coffee shop shortly before Evelyn disappeared, suggested he knew more than he was willing to divulge. Defense attorney Maggie Lewis countered with equal vigor, illuminating Jacob's past struggles with anxiety and the perception of him as a scapegoat in a community desperate for closure. The prosecution's case was framed as circumstantial, raising a shadow of doubt that enveloped the proceedings, like the ever-present fog of uncertainty that had settled over Driftwood. As each witness took the stand, emotions ran high, tears fell, anger flared, and each recounting deepened the ache of loss. Evelyn's friends spoke of her charitable spirit, painting her memory in vibrant hues against the dark backdrop of her tragic end. In contrast, Jacob's defense attempted to dismantle the narrative that had begun to take shape, relying on his unshakable alibi and an assertion of innocence. The final arguments loomed, the silence in the courtroom palpable. As the jury filed out to deliberate, the tension neared its breaking point. Outside, the town braced for a verdict that felt as inevitable as dusk settling into night. Yet the mixed desires for justice and mercy flickered in the hearts of all present. Could they secure a sense of closure for Evelyn? Or would the echoes of doubt leave the town hanging once more in uncertainty? The aftermath. As the verdict was read, a hush fell over the courtroom. A collective breath held as the words echoed off the walls. Jacob Fields was found guilty of second-degree murder. A decision that split the town down the middle. For some, there was relief. Vindication of a beloved community member was finally out of reach of the shadows that had claimed her life. For others, an unsettling sense of lost opportunity lingered, a question hanging heavily in the air. Had justice truly been served, or had an innocent man been condemned in the chaos that followed? In the weeks that followed, Driftwood struggled to find its equilibrium, the events of the trial reverberating through the community like ripples across a pond. Flowers adorned the library where Evelyn had spent countless hours. Friends and loved ones gathering to honor her memory. But beneath the facade of remembrance lay fractures, disagreements lingering like unhealed wounds that festered within neighbors who once shared coffee and warmth. Detectives Hayes and Coleman, while relieved at the conclusion of the trial, were left to grapple with their own ghosts. The case had changed them. The aftermath of Evelyn's story unfolded as a constant reminder of a community's fragility. They reflected on the layers of lives and relationships, intertwined in ways they had not predicted. Each face they saw on the street held stories that would never be fully told. The truth had excavated hidden animosities and exposed vulnerabilities, rendering what once felt like a sanctuary into a place of contemplation and sorrow. As the seasons began to shift, the townsfolk slowly found a way to move forward. Memorial events were organized in Evelyn's name, sparking conversations about mental health and community support. Jacob's trial may have closed an important chapter, but the book of Driftwood was not finished. The haunting memories and unresolved tensions lingered like a whisper on the wind, reminding them all that healing would require more than just a verdict. It necessitated the courage to confront their past, to seek understanding among one another as they forged paths toward reconciliation and hope. Reflection. Months have passed since the trial concluded, a bittersweet peace settling over Driftwood as the community continued to search for a way to heal. In quiet moments, Hayes and Coleman found themselves reflecting on the case that had become a poignant chapter in their own lives. Over coffee in the dimly lit cafe that Evelyn once loved, they shared stories of her vibrant spirit, recalling the warmth she brought to the town. Every laughter shared and tear shed. Open discussions about the impact of loss on a community that had prided itself on connection. Yet questions lingered, unfurling like leaves in the winds of change. They have done more to protect her. Was there a signal they had overlooked amid the echoes of normalcy? In the midst of their investigation, they realized that every person in Driftwood possessed fragments of truth and sorrow, each story intertwining with Evelyn's in ways they had yet to fully understand. As winter approached, leaving a crisp chill in the air, the detectives faced a new determination. They would work toward making Driftwood not just a place shaped by tragedy, but one inspired by resilience and togetherness. They vowed to honor Evelyn's spirit by advocating for those who suffered in silence, reminding their town that healing begins when communities unite to confront the darkness. It was a quiet resolve, but it reflected the depth of a shared vision of future, where whispers of pain could transform into a symphony of hope.